Hey y'all, Lance from Permanent Records here, back with another video. This time around I'm just here to show off some of the most recent arrivals we've gotten in the shop. As you all know, we're open 5 days a week at the Permanent Records Roadhouse, buying, selling, and trading mostly used records all day, every day. And we also sell records on Instagram. Anyway, it's been about a week since my last video and so much has happened, and I'm trying to think of what all we went down. It's really hard to keep track week to week, especially looking back because we're always looking forward. We're doing a pop-up at the Kia Forum tomorrow for the Queens of the Stone Age show. They're doing kind of a bizarre, what are they calling it? The Queen's Colossus, or Queen's Coliseum, I think is what they're calling it. And there's going to be a bunch of vendors and burlesque acts and all sorts of fun stuff happening for the few hours before the show. And then Queens of the Stone Age and Spiritualized are playing. So Tara and I are going to go to that show and just kind of enjoy a night out on the town after we sell some records at the pop-up. So anyway, that's what's happening in the foreseeable future. We'll be traveling to visit some family for the holidays. Of course, we'll be buying records. I'm going to meet up with some of the guys that I'm working on licensing reissues and archival releases with. One of them is one of the guys who used to play in Backjack, if you've ever heard of them. We licensed the track Bridgewater's Dynamite for Brown Acid. That's an insider secret. The track listing hasn't been announced for Brown Acid, the 18th trip yet, but they're through contacting them, I should say, we discovered that there is a whole LP plus worth of unreleased recordings, not only by Backjack, but by another band that never released anything called Parchment Farm, that is super heavy rock from Missouri. And I don't know if I should even be talking about this right now, but anyway, more on that to come. Lots of cool reissues in the works. If you haven't been keeping up with the digital releases of the Southern Rock stuff that I've been licensing with Riding Easy Records, this week's release, you can stream this everywhere. This is Mad Jack, and this album's called Straight Up. As you might imagine, this is some classic style Southern rock, fully whiskey soaked, and just, yeah, great private press, of course, Southern rock in a classic kind of Leonard Skinner style. It's really good. Some of the tracks are heavy. It's got its own album ender that's kind of in a Freebird kind of vein called Hanging Tree. Anyway, if you dig Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker Band, Molly Hatchet, Allman Brothers, 38 Special, all the classic Southern rock bands, you got to check out some of the stuff that we've been releasing digitally in December. It's kind of a Southern rock December. We just released TR Crooks. That'll be, it's streaming as of the recording of this video. That album's called To a Brother. Amazing stuff from Tennessee, obviously. And then we, prior to the Mad Jack, we reissued the Mammoth LP from Florida. And coming up next is Skydog. So stay tuned for that stuff. Lots of fun reissue projects on the way in 2024 for physical as well. So we'll have vinyl reissues on a bunch of things. And the first thing that will be on vinyl in 2024 on Riding Easy, first thing that I worked on anyway, is the Fraction record. All right, so getting into, well, before we get into the most recent arrivals that we've picked up, let's talk about something that's happened since we last spoke. As many of you know, Permanent Records reissued the Stonewall record. I think the first time we reissued this was back in 2019. We were the first label to have ever legitimately released this amazing album. It originally came out on a tax scam label called Tiger Lily back in '74, but the recordings are from '72. And what happened is those tapes were sitting on a shelf, and someone at Tiger Lily Records decided to take those tapes, press it to vinyl. Probably just a handful of copies were pressed as a promo only release. It was never widely distributed or marketed in any way whatsoever. It was never announced as a release proper. The label just worked the tax law, a loophole in the tax law, to put this record out and write it off as a loss, which is a more than just a loss for them on their taxes. This being treated the way that it was is one of the great rock and roll tragedies. This is a stunning hard rock album recorded in 1972 by these four guys from New York. If you like Granicus, Jerusalem, Grand Funk, Led Zeppelin, this is up there as far as quality. It is on the level of the best of the best. And the original pressing is so rare that the last time a copy came up, and it's been a few years now, the last time a copy came up for sale sold for $16,000 on eBay. Well, anyway, I got in touch with the surviving band members, I should say, and reissued it legitimately. And I work with them to this day on licensing this. Well, Noble Records out of North Carolina. You're probably familiar with Dylan over at Noble Records if you're on YouTube watching me right now. He did an exclusive Noble Records pressing of the Stonewall record, which I believe is still available. So go grab one from Dylan. You can grab one from the Permanent Records LA.com website. Wherever you get it, just get it, because it's one of the most incredible albums that most people have never heard, and it deserves to be, it should honestly be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's so good. If albums could be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this one would get my vote, absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into the most recent arrivals that we've gotten in the shop. Amazingly, another permanent release came back to us. We worked with Numero Group to reissue this Get Off My Case LP by Josephus. Basically, as you all know, Josephus released two full-length albums. One, the one is called Dead Man, and they released that on their own Hookah Records label back in, I want to say 69, but it might have been 70. Anyway, they did a second LP on the Mainstream label that's not quite as good in my opinion, but still great. Well, before the Dead Man record, they recorded demos, and this LP is full of demos for the Dead Man album that were never released before. It's got most of the tracks off of Dead Man and a couple of extras, I believe. I forget exactly what all the differences are between this and Dead Man. It's been a few years since we reissued this. Well, anyway, we licensed it from Numero Group for Record Store Day. It's out of print now, but we got a used copy in, and if you dig Josephus, you're gonna want to pick that one up for sure. All right, now on to the bread and butter. Got some classic Otis Redding right there. Another Stone Cold classic, Pearl by Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin really doesn't get enough love. She deserves all of the accolades. Some obscure prog stuff there. A couple of prog obscurities here in the mix. That's Leviathan. The previous one was The Alchemist. This is an indie rock record by a band called Mellowdrone that has become collectible since it came out in 2004. Fans of the Monkees will recognize this guy's name, Mike Nesmith. If you've never gotten into the solo Mike Nesmith stuff, these records are quite good, actually. Especially Nevada Fighter, which is this one here. And the other one that I like the most is called Magnetic South. You would not recognize this music as someone who was in the Monkees if you didn't already know what it was. This is legitimate countrified rock and roll stuff of the era, and it's worth your attention, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked it up. Susie and the Banshees, gotta love that gothy, new wavy sound. Grodeck, Whipperginny. I always have to think twice before saying that out loud. Now again, reissued this. This is a crazy rare, like, jazz funk thing. I believe these guys backed, it's produced by Dave Matthews, and I believe these guys backed James Brown, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I love that feedback. But anyway, this is a stunning, funky, jazzy LP. Head Machine, Orgasm. This is a reissue of an extremely rare album. Two, I believe, of the guys from Uriah Heep were in Head Machine. Also related to Toe Fat. Both of those artists have albums that deserve your attention, whether you think they do or not. Fear of Music, with that awesome textured black jacket. That's maybe my second favorite Talking Heads album. I think Remain in Light is the best, but it's up there for sure. Those of you who are not familiar with Moon Duo is Ripley from a band called Wooden Ships. He's now in the Rose City band, and his significant other, Sine, doing a more minimal synth kind of vibe. It's super repetitive. Drum machine, at least in the beginning, it was just the two of them with a drum machine and guitar and keyboards. And I think they ultimately ended up adding a live drummer. I have not been keeping up with Moon Duo, but I really liked them early on. I'm stoked on the Rose City band. I think Ripley has kind of aged really gracefully into that band, and Moon Duo is really great. This is a live record of theirs, a limited edition, one time only kind of thing. Yeah, if you like Suicide and stuff like that, you'll dig Moon Duo for sure. This is a Bollywood funk compilation. For those of you who are not familiar with Bollywood films, they're, you know, the Indian version of, well, they're Indian films that are very, very musical in nature. Crazy soundtracks and wild choreographed dance scenes and things. Well, anyway, some of the music in those films is extremely funky, lots of breakbeats, etc. And yeah, this is a compilation of some of the funkiest jams. Lots of sitar all over that thing. Experimental fans will dig that Wolf Eyes record. We got the classic Purple Rain with the poster. Everybody loves Prince, right? Another classic, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. This, I don't know, is this my fourth favorite Sabbath record? Something like that. Anyway, you really can't go wrong. If the record says Black Sabbath on it, just grab it because it's likely great. Bronze, couple other little kind of minor metal things here. Little BOC, Don't Fear the Reaper. We got a disco version of Money by Pink Floyd there. The artist that remixed that is called Rosebud. We got some classic Stones here. Double LP Hot Rocks collection. This is a local band that has played the Roadhouse a few times. Fox Bodies, their album Vixen on colored vinyl. We got Vanity from Vanity 6 here. If you don't already know Vanity 6, that's some really fun stuff on the Paisley Park label. It's Prince related and killer like contemporary R&B jams. Super dancey. An indie colored vinyl 10-inch by a band called Bridge and Tunnel. Here's a fun one. So If you didn't already know this, Permanent Records, well, how could you not know this if you started this video at the beginning? We have our own record label. We're not super active with it anymore, but we used to be. As you know, I outsource a lot of the reissue projects that I work on to Writing Easy Records. Well, anyway, back in 2006, when we started the store, we also started a record label, and the third release on the record label was the second release by a band called Cave. If you're not familiar with Cave already, but you like krautrock, you have to check them out. They're one of the most... It's okay, don't worry. They're one of the most tight and repetitive and rhythmic krautrock bands that exist today. Yeah, it's just, they are a sight to behold and a force to be reckoned with in the studio as well. Well, they started off as a side project to a band called Warhammer 48K. That was the first release on Permanent. The second release on Permanent Records was the first Cave LP, Hunt Like Devils / Jams, which was like basically a compilation of 2 EPs that existed on CD before, and then the second Cave release before they ended up going on to greener pastures or bigger labels than Permanent was and still is. They ended up on Drag City and yeah, other labels as well, but that's where they did their last few records. We did this 10-inch with them, and there's 2 Cave tracks on here. This is a split 10-inch with another band from Columbia, Missouri, which is where Cave started, called California Raisins. And California Raisins were a rad, like noisy synth punk kind of band, and Cave were, like I said, very crowdy. And anyway, one of the tracks on here is called Raven's Hash, and if you're not already familiar with Raven, we reissued on our label the Back to Ohio Blues LP by Raven, and that song is an homage to a track off the Raven Back to Ohio Blues LP. Some classic punk rock here. You can never go wrong with, you never get sick, I should say, of Nevermind the Bollocks, right? A little classic funky disco stuff there. There's a really killer version of Strawberry Letter 23 on there by Shuggy Otis. Got some Jody Watley, the hype sticker, and this classic Wiz price sticker still on the shrink wrap there. Again, more fun contemporary R&B stuff. We got some George Clinton, P-Funk Represent, Herbie Hancock, Monster. Love Herbie, man. So good. Speaking of dancey fun stuff, the Tom Tom Club. This record's stunning if you like Talking Heads. That's Tina Weymouth. Maybe Chris was also in Tom Tom Club as well, but yeah, Chris Franz. They're both members of the Talking Heads and were also in Tom Tom Club. Another Herbie solo record. That one's got Rocket on it. Just such a banger. That's a dance floor filler. Oh, sorry, I skipped right over this one. This band's called Slingshot Dakota. This is another colored vinyl thing that I won't take the time to pull out of there right now. Classic Blonde on Blonde. Speaking of breaks and beats, we got Bob James, Touchdown. I love the fact that the album cover of this is just a football, one big football, and that Bob James autographed the football for the cover of his own album. We got Sealed Neil Young live LP from 1994 there. Another sealed and collectible Tom Petty live record. What is this thing? We're gonna kind of cruise past a couple of things that I don't think we should spend time on since we're creeping up on 20 minutes. Gotta love Santana Abraxas. If you haven't spent any time with Santana recently, go back and revisit it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I love the Kinks. They don't get enough love. Such great songwriters, Ray Davies, etc. That was Ma Jamal, as you probably saw. This is Well, that's Michael Yonkers on the cover. If you've never heard Michael Yonkers, you got to get into his stuff. So he is a Minneapolis-based musician, and he privately pressed. I probably have them on the shelf here. Let's digress. So he privately pressed some singer-songwriter records, some like folky records back in the early 70s. Here's a few of them. So you got Michael Yonkers, Michael Lee Yonkers. This one's called Borders of My Mind. This one's called Grimwood. That's a great one. This one's called Goodnight Sunball. So yeah, anyway, Michael Yonkers, he was self-releasing these albums on his own label back in the day, and it was very, very prolific. As you can see, that's the Michael Yonkers Records label on this particular album. And before, well, he ended up doing those more mellow folk, like acoustic singer-songwriter type records because he had a really bad accident at work. I forget what he was doing for a living at the time, but I believe a whole shelf full of heavy things fell on him. He broke his back, and he ended up in the hospital for a very long period of time, just incapacitated, essentially. And he's been struggling with that pain ever since, and he's been making music ever since as well. Well, anyway, Damage Bug, which is John Dwyer of the OCs, he did a Damage Bug on Yonkers album where he covers a bunch of Michael Yonkers songs, which is pretty rad. And not only is this album really great, the album Micro Miniature Love, which is recordings from I think 68 or 69, is also incredible and maybe my favorite Yonkers record. He didn't release it back in the day, but Distill Records released it in the late 90s or early 2000s for the first time, and then it ended up coming out on Sub Pop eventually. I don't know if it's still in print or not, but it's definitely worth checking out. This is just, I kind of just want to keep this and hang it up at the Roadhouse, but we offered that up for sale because it came in to us. The Ramones, is there a bad Ramones record? I don't think so. End of the Century is one of the best, though, for sure. This is another permanent release. I think the collection we got some of this stuff from was a former customer of ours. And I believe this particular guy, he lived in Chicago when we had our store there and picked a bunch of this stuff up from us. And then he is moving and sold his record collection to us, and that's how the circle of records life works. We got an unofficial Evol by Sonic Youth here. Oh, and just to get back to that previous album I was holding up, that's Purling Hiss. So Purling Hiss, this guy, his name is Michael Polizzi, or Mike Polizzi. He still does stuff under the name Purling Hiss, but he's also played with Kurt Vile and the Violators over the years. He also he was in a band called Birds of Maya. And anyway, he's a shredder. Dude is like Hendrix worship on like a J Mascis tangent. And he's an amazing guitar player, but he also writes really great songs. That album was his first solo album. We put it out on permanent. That's I think we put it out in 2009 originally, but that's the 2014 tour repress edition that's got silk screen jacket, and it was limited to 250 copies. We got a sealed, speaking of desert rock stuff here, we got, I don't know why I said speaking of, we weren't really talking about that, but anyway, now we are. Speaking of desert rock, we got a sealed copy of the original pressing. You can tell by the address there, it says Los Angeles, or vice versa. It says Hollywood. The Hollywood address is the first pressing. Los Angeles are later pressings, and this is the OG on Bong Load Records, which was run by my pal Rob Schnapp, who's a regular over at the Roadhouse. And Rob has a recording studio right down the street from the Roadhouse. So he was an early regular from the very early days of the Roadhouse. And last but not least, we got this great Numero Group box set here. Their Eccentric Soul series is fantastic. This is a 4 LP box set called Twilight's Lunar Rotation. You really can't go wrong. Literally everything Numero Group does is worth your attention, even if it's not a genre of music that you typically dig on. Take a few seconds and check it out. And if you like soul and funk music, you can do much worse than just investing in the entire Numero Group catalog. So, yeah, I guess that's about it for today. Thank you all for sticking around till the end here. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing, liking and subscribing down there to our channel. Liking our channel, subscribing, telling your friends, spreading the word about Permanent Records Roadhouse, and Stonewall, of course. That's it for now. Happy holidays to all of you. I hope you get to enjoy some great time with your family, friends, and more importantly, your record collection. Until next time.